Now, as the evidence, inference, accusation, and even retractions mount at the State Capture Commission, this evening we ask the question, to what end? Will this commission actually yield anything apart from a report? UCT Associate Professor in Public Law, Dr. Cathleen Powell, joins me now via Skype to discuss just that. Cathleen, I read an interesting article that you had penned with regards to commissions as a whole. And my question is that you say that this commission is not supposed to be adversarial, but inquisitorial. Yes. But are we finding that the two are sometimes overlapping?
Well, very much so in both an inquisitorial and an adversarial procedure. Firstly, you're trying to find the truth. And secondly, the parties and their lawyers have an interest in pushing a particular version. So sometimes an inquisitorial procedure will have some accusatorial elements, adversarial elements, as we saw with this cross-examination, which you can get in an inquisitorial process, but it tends to be more adversarial. And I suppose where you don't get much overlap is if you have a proceedings that is set out to be adversarial, like most of the South African court proceedings, then there won't be many inquisitorial elements to it. But both of them are different ways of trying to find the truth.
And Cathleen, I guess the next question that any logical mind would ask is, if it's not adversarial in any way, how can we possibly hope that we will end up with prosecutions as a result of these hearings?
Well, remember, in the actual prosecution, the evidence has to be led again. Any statement that the witnesses to the commission made against themselves can't be used, so that evidence has to be found some other way. And the evidence will be led in an adversarial manner. So we mustn't think of the commissions of inquiry as a sort of mini criminal trial. They're there to establish the facts, and the facts will be used to draw up a recommendation, which then go to the president. In the course of all that fact-finding, the people of South Africa are also meant to work out what's going on, which is very important for the political choices we make and the political pressure we create. But that's all the commission actually does. At the end of the commission, in fact, already the NPA should have a good idea of what crimes it wants to prosecute, and it should be looking into those itself. It can use the facts that it gets from the commission to investigate anew, but it's going to have to find all that evidence itself to present in front of an adversarial process of a criminal court.
You speak about the NPA, of course, some say there's been a vacant seat ever since Shaun Abrahams came into power, and we are only shortlisting some of the people that would be taking up the cases that would emanate from the state capture inquiry. I don't know, when I look at it, I am not necessarily sure which is which. The Zondo Commission has proved very interesting in a sense that some of the people who we thought were heroes and would be those who are in the accusation corner have come out to be just as tainted, i.e. Nene. So, and right now, as you know, as this is going on, Pravin Gordhan was really getting the hammer from the EFF, who are claiming that he should follow in Nene's footsteps. So I can't see who the good guys are and who the bad guys are.
You know, that's one of the weaknesses of the adversarial process, which makes me very glad that the Commission of Inquiry is inquisitorial. You do tend to assume the fiction for an adversarial process that there's a goodie and a baddie, that there's one side that's completely good and one side that's completely bad. It's never like that. Your heroes always have weaknesses. They always made mistakes. They might even have been dishonest. I'm not sure I agree with you that Nene is as tainted as the people he's talking about. He met the Guptas a few times and didn't admit to it. Who knows, maybe he was even tempted to be corrupt. But what he actually did in the end was to hold the fort against enormous pressure to prevent terrible corruption. So I think an inquisitorial process allows for a little bit more nuance, as we can simply work out what happened. We don't have to work out who the baddie and the goodie is. We can get the evidence from the people who know what happened.
I think you and I are going to have to respectfully disagree with regards to Nhlanhla Nene, because here's a man who had ample opportunity to really mention one of those instances in which he met the Guptas, but I found the former minister to only speak the whole truth once he actually takes an oath. That is not exactly how I imagined him prior to that experience. But more and more, it sounds like, especially with the Zondo Commission, it sounds like the ruling party rather, is on trial by extension of its members who are occupying senior positions within government. Should the ANC rather consider not only representing itself in instances where it's been referred to or implicated, but rather coming out with their own version of events? Because to believe that the ruling party didn't know anything for about 10 years is really unfathomable.
That's a very difficult fiction to swallow. Remember that the way Zondo has set up this commission, and commissions of inquiry have a lot of latitude in what evidence they accept and what kind of evidence leading is allowed. He has allowed parties to cross-examine other parties who have implicated them, but only if they present their own version of events at the time. So what you're referring to is the ANC's chance to step into the ring and say, no, hang on, we want to cross-examine, we want to contest some of the evidence that's being brought. But before it can do that, it has to actually present its own version. That's the way the Zondo Commission works. I agree with you that it would be a good idea, but of course, once they produce their own evidence, they can be questioned on their own evidence as well. So for them, I suppose, especially if there has been knowledge of corruption, and I agree with you, it's impossible that they didn't know, they've got to decide quite how much damage control they want to do. Because once they step into the ring, then they've got to answer all the questions that get asked.
Cathleen, you say that it's important for the commission to actually win public support and also get their buy-in in order for this commission to be effective. I ask the question. Constantly I'm at these hearings, I hear Judge Zondo saying, we urge South Africans with information, we urge South Africans who are near these instances. And that repeated call to me says he does not have a litany of director generals who are lining up to give him evidence. Does this augur well for the commission?
I don't know enough to know how much more evidence they need. They certainly seem to have a lot of it already. And they're also analyzing the Gupta leaks. So I think they have a lot of evidence to work on. Perhaps Judge Zondo just wants as much corroborating evidence as possible so that it doesn't all seem to come from one source. I'm not sure why there seems to be this fervor to get more evidence in. I would have thought he was pretty swamped, as it is. When I said we need buy-in, I didn't actually mean buy-in by people willing to testify. I meant buy-in by the people of South Africa who are watching and getting educated about what's happening. And the buy-in that's needed from us is that we engage with the political events and we're prepared to demand accountability for them. That's the kind of buy-in that a commission of inquiry can achieve fairly uniquely to any other process.
Cathleen, I'm going to speak about the other commission which was going on and is now in the process of filing a report. The Nugent Commission, which is preparing its report sometime this week or early next week to hand over to the president, has claimed the scalp of Moyane. The Zondo Commission, by circumstance or otherwise, has claimed that of Nhlanhla Nene. After 2 years of investigations, which is what the Zondo Commission expects the length of this commission to be, surely we expect something harsher. We expect prosecutions. And that's my personal buy-in, Kath.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And you're not alone. A lot of people don't just want the truth. They want justice, by which they mean punishment for the people who committed crimes, which I suppose satisfies our sense that people can't get away with this. And of course, the other advantage is that hopefully we could recover some of the money which South Africa needs plowed back into the fiscus. Remember, the prosecutions can still happen. For that, we needn't have waited this long. The NPA, but unfortunately that's also been a captured institution, could have started far earlier. It could have started when the Gupta leaks came out. It could have started before then. So prosecutions they should be in the process of preparation as the Zondo Commission carries on. The other thing that could continue to happen while the evidence emerges is that people could be fired. That doesn't have to wait for the final report, as we've seen in the case of Tom Moyane.
And that's exactly what I was thinking, that if he was able to act before the commission, the Nugent Commission, gives him the report and his recommendations, and act on Moyane, surely he can act on what is South Africa's biggest heist. I mean, I hear people speaking about VBS, yes, but it pales in comparison to what we're talking about here. We are alleging that billions and billions of rands migrated to some parts of the world at the behest of this one family, and it seems now it's harder to find those that supported the Guptas, just as it was harder to find those who supported apartheid. Yes?
That's just what I was thinking. After apartheid ended, there was nobody in South Africa who ever supported it. Of course, we all change sides as the new winner emerges. Although we must be careful to not get too complacent, because there's a very strong movement to, as you said, to confusing people as to who the goodies and baddies are, and to paint as unreliable the evidence of a lot of people who have some very important information to offer. So maybe I shouldn't claim that the winning side has changed so quickly. But to get back to your question of yes, something should be happening now. Remember that the president, for certain of his hirings, in particular cabinet, and also some of the commissioners, he doesn't need to follow due process when he fires people. He can just fire them. So he certainly has a free hand now, and as the evidence emerges, he'll get more and more buy-in to do it. He has a free hand to fire corrupt or incompetent ministers.
Well, Cathleen, that's where the politics come in, and I guess until he actually gets a mandate from the people of South Africa, he will always consider the political friends and those that he has around them through the ANC, and that may delay his action. But after 2 years, and if Cyril Ramaphosa, as the Ipsos polls suggest, becomes the next president of South Africa after the elections next year, surely I will be expecting him to give credence to these recommendations, to show that it was not all for naught.
Yes, I think we can make our mandate clear now already. The public have various ways in which they can express their opinion. So we could start now. And I'm a bit nervous about waiting for 2 years, given the depth of the corruption that's being exposed. If people were really doing that, actually not just committing individual corrupt acts, but actually keeping an entire system going, whereby there is a different set of people in power from the ones that were elected. If people are doing that, I don't want them to do it for the next 2 years. So I think he could start firing soon, and that is the political will that we've got to start creating, so that he doesn't need to wait for some sort of official mandate. Remember that an election doesn't tell him exactly what we want. We've got to tell him what he wants. All he has from the election are a set of results. So we can start telling him now.
Cathleen Powell, Associate Professor at UCT's Public Law Faculty, I thank you for your time.